Good morning. It's Tuesday, and what are we going to talk about today, Cameroon? Well, I think we're going to have a little chit chat about Talcum X. Oh, goody. I don't want to talk about this shithead. All right. So, why are we talking about Talcum X this morning? Um. Well, because Sean King says Jesus image is a form of white supremacy that must go. They should all come down.
The white Jesuses.
So, remember a few years ago there was that whole Charlottesville thing where some shitheads did some shitty stuff. Y'all remember all that.
Yeah.
And that was not the beginning of the tear down history 1984 thing, but it was kind of the explosion of it. Okay, y'all are tracking on that. And back then, the Donald said, "Who's next? Are we going to tear down statues of Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln?"
Yeah, I remember.
Oh, that's just hyperbole. You're just using the slippery slope fallacy. Okay. For starters, lefties, just because an argument has become cliche does not make it a fallacy. That is not what makes it a bad argument. The slippery slope fallacy is not a fallacy. A trope, a cliche, perhaps. But if we have learned anything over the last 10 years from our politicians, the slippery slope is an inevitability. When you're talking about Democrats, the slippery slope, it's not a fallacy. It's the plan. It's their platform. Right?
Yeah, and part of the problem with all of the logical fallacies, as they were, is the vast majority of them actually have a realistic application. Like, there is a time and a place for appeal to authority, for example. There is a time and a place to point out that you are on a slippery slope. There is a time and a place to point out the no true Scotsman, and so forth and so on. Um, and these things are used against us. And so, well, you're just engaging in a logical fallacies. Well, no, no, no. Only if my logic is bad. It's not a fallacy if my logic is sound. It's actually a reasonable argument if my logic is sound.
Well,
So,
and in those cases, especially the appeal to authority is not necessarily a fallacy. Um, with an appeal to authority, it yes, it becomes fallacious when okay. So with a proper appeal to authority, what you're doing is you point to evidence, and often the evidence you're going to point to is going to be from a study that was conducted by someone who has established themselves as competent to conduct that study. Like, you know, for example, if you were to say that I've got a study that was performed by a 9-year-old kid that proves the plastic straws are going to kill us all, that might be an inadequate appeal to authority. Similarly, if you point to something clearly false and then argue that it must be true because Einstein believed it. Well, Einstein, that doesn't make Einstein perfect, or rather, the degree to which we expect Einstein to have been perfect is not sufficient evidence to make his opinion impact an unbelievable fact pattern. All right, so just pointing to the authority is not sufficient. The authority must have also produced reliable data.
yes, yeah, if you're gonna use Einstein as an example, well, let's talk about physics. I'd say Einstein's a pretty well established authority on that. And by the way, good morning, Drew. I know you tagged me in the thing. Um, did he tag you? He posted a video of a cop threatening to pepper spray somebody over a speeding ticket.
Yeah, okay. So I watched part of that, and here's my first criticism. Okay, I'm not saying that these two situations are the same as the George Floyd situation, but there is something there that I want to point out. With George Floyd and with Rayshard Brooks, in both cases, the thing the media shows us is a video that starts when everything looks its worst. Likewise with the video of the guy saying that the cop threatened to pepper spray him. Well, he starts recording after the door's already open on the car and the cops threatening to pepper spray him. And I'll tell you the truth, the cop seemed like he was kind of a douchebag. It does smell like there was something, like you just got a shitty cop doing a shitty job there. But in all fairness to the cop, the recording starts after anything else that came before moving to the get out of your car or I'll pepper spray you step. Now I suspect that's a shitty cop that doesn't know what he's doing and is about to make a bad move that's going to get him in trouble. And I have the suspicion of him being a bad cop because he tried to pepper spray the guy and his canister was empty. And, well, soldier, if you don't maintain your arms, your equipment, and yourself, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, though there's an alternate theory. You think cops might be ever so slightly on edge right now?
Maybe.
Doesn't make it right, but
Nope.
does make it explainable. Okay, so.
And it makes it somebody else, it does make it somebody's fault.
But Martin Luther King and white Jesus. Okay, let's be realistic about something, okay? If Jesus was born in the Middle East, he probably had some shade of brown skin. I don't even think it's reasonable to dispute that.
Yeah. Okay. Jesus probably was not white. He was also almost certainly not black. Get over yourselves.
Yeah,
in fact,
really,
he was a Jew.
Drew's in the comments said not to mention he was shaking because he was probably scared for his life because you should not pepper spray somebody for speed. Drew,
All right, stop. We're not going to talk about this on the show this morning. That's not the topic we're discussing this morning, but let me just put a pin in that real quick. If he was about to get pepper sprayed for something, it wasn't for speeding. If you say the words, George Floyd was killed over a $20 counterfeit bill, you're a fucking liar. If you say the words, Rayshard Brooks was killed over a DUI, you're a fucking liar. If you say the words, Breonna Taylor was murdered in her bed while she was sleeping, you're a liar. It's false. George Floyd died because he resisted arrest. Rayshard Brooks died because he resisted arrest, having committed a legitimate crime. If you get pulled over by the cops and then you jump out and start shooting, I'm not saying that's what this guy did, but let me take the example to a little bit of an extreme to make the point and put a pin in it, and then we're going to walk off of this. If you get pulled over by the police and you get out of the car and start shooting at them, you did not die over speeding. You died because you chose to shoot at the cops. So I'll say this about the guy in the video. The officer asked him to step out of his car. So what's the problem?
Well, he didn't step out of his car.
You step out of the car, you close the door behind you, and you refuse the search. You demand a warrant. That is not resisting arrest. That is due process.
Yeah, one of the things that's been talked about is you can know your rights and you can practice the Fifth Amendment and you can do it without being a cock knocker.
There is a big difference between saying, "No, officer, I insist you follow procedure," and just being an asshole. The job is hard enough right now, and that's all, and that's the end of the conversation on that.
Drew, don't
Uh,
apologize. We just get passionate, buddy. It's all right.
well, and I'm getting tired of talking about this stuff because you know what? There's a handful of bad cops. There's no defense for bad cops. But right now, every time a cop sneezes without putting a mask on and disinfecting the room, it's evidence of systemic white supremacy. I'm I'm losing my patience with it.
So, part of the argument for this whole white Jesus versus black Jesus thing, um, there's this whole thing that says that Jesus has essentially been whitewashed to make him more palatable to European Christians and so forth. And so, okay, let's just accept that argument as fact. Is black Jesus any better, any less offensive? I mean, because if we're going to tell the truth, he's more
Shouldn't be.
likely. Because I mean, if we're really going to tell the truth, anything other than mildly brown Jesus, which is the color you typically are if you're born in the Israel type area, anything other than that is the same sort of what if you can make somebody's skin whiter to make them more palatable? Well, you can't make somebody's skin darker to make them more palatable. And ever since I first heard this argument come up, so oh well, Jesus was black. That's honestly, who really cares? Does that change John 3:16? Does that change love your enemy? Does that change I am the way and the life? Because I don't think it does. Not even in the slightest. It's like a hand grenade. We're going to argue over this and we're going to blow up the rest of the conversation. So we can't have the argument over what really needs to be had. And I swear, this guy, Martin Luther King, Sean King, whatever, he's only doing. In fact, Styx Hexenhammer had a fantastic tweet where he said he sincerely believes Sean King is actually on the right. And he trolls so hard on the left on purpose just to make the left look absurd. And I'm not saying I necessarily believe that, but there is a certain kind of perverse logic to it.
Well, and you know this little reach here might just be the nail in that coffin of evidence. Um. Oh, wait. Okay, so here they point out George Floyd, a black man. Let me see. Did they say Sean King is a black man? They don't. I wonder why.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, man, and you want to talk about all the ad hominems. Have you heard Sean King's explanation? No, I swear I'm black because my mom got knocked up on a one night stand.
Oh yeah, no, I've got it. He's a white boy with two white parents who decided he wanted so badly to be black that he went and besmirched the name of his family and accused his mother of being a whore and his father of being a cuck.
Yeah, I mean, wow, just wow. But yeah, all this stuff about we need to take down stained glass windows and statues. I mean, are we just going to throw away the entire catalog of art from the Renaissance period, which mostly revolved around religious imagery, specifically the Mother Mary and Jesus Christ? And yeah, they were often painted as white people. But are we just what? No more Leonardo da Vinci. Bye bye. Good. I mean, when you have The Simpsons and South Park routinely predicting the future, you really got to look in the mirror. You really have to look in the mirror, people.
Now, okay, so you're talking about a Jew while the um you're talking about a Jewish guy in the desert. This is not a black man. Let me point something out. There's a thing that black people have that white people don't have.
Extra melanin?
Colorism.
Oh. Yeah, I only just learned about this a
White
few years
people
ago.
white people do not discriminate against other white people based on the degree to which they are white. Okay? Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about the race mixing thing. There are when you're dealing with actual racists, actual white supremacists, um they're not going to treat you kindly if you're half black or half Korean or half whatever. Um, but that's not the same thing. That's not the colorism thing. Among black people, siblings will make fun of one another and even be cruel to one another if they're just lighter black, if they're not as dark. Right? Now, when segregation was still a thing, um, a lighter skinned black person would would pass as white. They would be ridiculed by other blacks for passing, which you know, take care of yourself, do your thing, and and all that. The skin color just doesn't matter that much. You know what matters is being a bad person. Like Sean King, for example. That's the whitest white boy that ever whited down Martin Luther King Avenue. And he's an asshole.
Yeah, but he's worshipped by the left. He is the supreme woke leader.
I mean, let's be real. Sean King is not playing at terrorism, at being an activist for the active terrorist group Black Lives Matter because he's a black man. Sean King is an active terrorist and uh, proselytizing propagandist for the active terrorist group Black Lives Matter, and for that reason is pretending to be a black man.
Oh yeah, no. What he's done is he's basically Voldemort, and he figured out, well, I can't name my followers Death Eaters. Need something slightly more palatable. Otherwise, they're going to rightly view me as the enemy. So Black Lives Matter, and something we've discussed a lot. Like it's perfectly innocuous statement. Of course, Black Lives Matter. I mean, of fucking course they do.
Yeah, it's well, Black Lives Matter. You can think of the nomenclature in the same kind of way you can think of if I were to start a cult that sacrificed children by sacrificed children to Moloch for profit and political gain, and we did our child sacrifices by pitching babies into giant uh, spiked wheels of death. Um, well, I'm not going to call it the cult of Moloch. I'm going to call it something that people like Planned Parenthood.
Planned not parenthood. In fact, unplanned not parenthood. Uh, but no, man. So, real quick, I just want to touch on it. I'm going to make a prediction. Maybe I'm going to be wrong. But Bubba Wallace and his magical noose. Now,
Oh, yeah. That's got.
to,
Go ahead.
now to be fair, this is slightly more believable than the Jussie Smollett situation. Like, as soon as I heard somebody in Chicago say, "This is MAGA country," I was like, nope, bullshit. Absolutely. Did not happen. So you got Bubba Wallace, who's half black. He's a NASCAR driver. We should get rid of Confederate imagery at NASCAR races. They're in Talladega Speedway, and he found a noose in his. I'm not real sure if it's his garage or his locker or whatever, but basically, he found a noose in his private area, and of course, the implication is that he's being intimidated.
Yeah, a noose, not a note with a noose, not a note hanging on a noose, not a noose with an effigy hanging, just a noose.
Yeah, and realistically, how
Which
many of us were in
I'm
Boy
not
Scouts?
dismissing. I'm not dismissing the noose thing as in and of itself as being unimportant. Um, and yeah, I remember when I learned how to tie a noose because I was learning knots, and it is one of the knots that's useful, and it's actually a very useful knot for a whole lot of other things that aren't lynching mobs. But
See, but my point is, I don't
because
even
it's
know how to
basically a
tie a
series
noose.
of half hitches with I'm not gonna. I can show you sometime if you're really interested. It's not difficult. It's a complex knot. Um,
No, I'd rather you didn't because somebody will whip out their cell phone and you'll be showing me how to tie a noose, and then we'll be excommunicated from public life forever and ever. So say we all amen. So that's a that's a skill I'm
yeah.
afraid to learn. So, but here's my thing, okay? And Brandon Tatum pointed this out in his video on it, and it was one of my very first thoughts about it. Um, NASCAR has millions of dollars wrapped up in it in a way that most other professional sports, and yes, I know, use the term loosely, but it's got millions of dollars wrapped up in it in a way that most other professional sports do not, because the cars themselves are just so fucking expensive. There's a reason why they're plastered with sponsors,
Yeah.
because those cars cost a lot of money. There's the old joke about there's nothing stock on a stock car. And buddy, that's the truth.
Yep.
So somehow somebody makes it into Bubba Wallace's garage, hangs a noose. What? And there's like what? No pin codes on the doors. Hell, no rolly doors that are padlocked, much less security cameras. I mean, if I'm tied, okay, and I give Bubba Wallace $250,000 to slap Tide on the side of his car as he does 400 laps in a circle.
Yeah. My
I'm
contract probably includes you will keep a security system.
well, and I'd imagine just going back to my insurance days, the whatever massive liability NASCAR carries
Yeah.
probably requires security measures. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I'd be willing to go back into insurance if I could take that contract over.
And you're actually
But
you're all the arguments that you're presenting. You're actually making me rethink the way I was thinking about this. See, you mentioned that this smells like Jussie Smollett. Um, how is his name actually?
it's Jussie
It's
Smollett.
Jussie Smollett.
Yes.
Jussie, Jussie.
You
We're
could
gonna
just call
take
him Gay Tupac.
we're gonna take a normal name and just twist it so that people screw it up, and then we can call them racists when they screw it up because we took a normal thing and twisted it so it wasn't normal anymore. Okay, that's adorable. Anyway, you mentioned earlier that it smelled a little of the Jussie Smollett thing. Um, with Jussie Smollett, that was that's obviously a hoax that was conducted by the pseudo victim. Um, it this one smells more like a false flag attack. A little more like an activist trying to create black propaganda. So it would not surprise me at all my expectation would not surprise me at all if we were to later learn that it would surprise me more to hear that Bubba did this himself in the way that Jussie Smollett did it than it would to learn that some activist journalist or BLM activist bribed him to do it or used their credentials to sneak in so that they could create a headline. I'll be amazed. I'll be just gobsmacked if you can show me evidence that this was done by another NASCAR driver or one of the fans.
Especially another NASCAR driver.
Especially another NASCAR driver. And let me explain something to you guys. Drew says he doesn't really watch NASCAR. Okay. I'm not a big NASCAR guy. If I'm being perfectly honest, NASCAR is a white people sport by a wide margin. I went to Talladega for the race one time, and we got there balls early in the morning. By 6 o'clock in the morning, we were already at the racetrack, and we were outside tailgating. So it's 0600. I'm drinking coffee and Guinness and we're making eggs and bacon and sausage and biscuits on a propane grill. And by the time the race started, I was 30 Guinnesses deep, and I fell asleep in the inside corner. So, I mean, I had enough black beer in my belly that I'm sitting right up against the inside corner with these loud ass cars whipping by, and I slept right through it. Excuse me. As far as the news thing goes, yeah, let's be real. NASCAR is a white people sport, and that's the point. What's happening right now is not black people are offended by symbols that remind them of a history of racism. What's happening right now is black ethno-supremacists under the banner of Black Lives Matter have decided to target white people for extermination. That's what's happening.
Well, and just to back it up, how many of these hate crimes, and God, do I use that term loosely, but how many of these hate crimes actually end up being racially motivated crimes? Hell, how many of these crimes end up being that there was no crime in the first place? But the narrative is what mattered. Like, I'm reminded of the Duke lacrosse players. And that one always seemed really funny to me from the beginning. Like, why would you rape a black stripper? Frankly, if you're a bunch of rich white boys, you could just pay a stripper to have sex with you. It would not be that difficult. Like, ooh, and we're not supposed to talk about things like that, but it's the truth. And then even the situation with George Floyd, okay, you want to say that the cops were wrong, that they murdered George Floyd? Fine, let's just take that argument for a second. They didn't do it because of race. One of the cops was black. One of the cops was Asian. This was not just Whitey decided to execute darky. In fact, so rarely are these sorts of racial crimes committed that when they actually happen, the perpetrators get executed. According to Papa Sheepdog, the last verified one happened in Texas in the early 90s when some white boys drug a black man behind them in their truck and road rashed him to death. Well, this happened in Texas. So they got executed. And okay, good on them. You commit a capital offense in Texas.
Well, all those evil white Southern racists just let them. Wait. They let them go. No, they killed them. They took the bad guys that did the bad thing and sent them to the bad place.
And and honestly, here's the thing about this is why it feels like a Jussie Smollett situation to me. It's just too perfect. Like if you wanted to write a story about the evil Magateers, well, them beating up a black gay left-wing actor in the middle of the night and tying a noose around his neck and throwing bleach on him to clean up his skin color. Like that's that sounds like some shit out of a Lifetime movie. It really does. And it's sort of the same thing here. So, well, if any place is going to have racists, well, it's going to be Talladega, Alabama, buddy. And okay, I bet there are. I say sizable, but only in relative comparison. I bet there is a sizable amount of white racists in Alabama. But,
Why? Why would you bet that?
well, because things are intergenerational. Just because the pool has gotten smaller doesn't mean that there was not initially a pool to choose from.
See, okay, let me throw a little pushback at you. Most of the black population of the United States is, in fact, living in the South. You know where you see real racism in the United States? You see it in Democrat strongholds where your Ivy Tower white liberals believe that voter ID is racist because they honestly believe that black people are too stupid to use the internet, or that black people don't know where the DMV is, or that black people are all so poor that they can't pay the bill, they can't pay for a state ID. And a funny little twist in that one, turns out that in almost all the states where state ID is a requirement for voting, the ID is free. And in the states where you have sanctuary cities that are opposed to using an ID at the voting booth, that are opposed to voter ID, they charge money for the ID. Huh. So, I mean, there's your pushback right there. That you expect there's just, oh yeah, well, we can just expect that in the South there are some racists. Why? On what evidence? I mean,
Oh,
the only evidence you have for that expectation is that it's narrative.
oh, I'm not saying that it's not narrative based. Don't misunderstand. That's actually kind of part of the point that I'm making. That it's too perfect. What the white boy sport has this black interloper. He wants to get rid of the Confederate flag, so he magically finds a noose in his garage. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess it's possible, but it's not very likely because again, so many of these things end up not being a racially related motive at all. Like I go back to George Zimmerman being a white Mexican. You know, actual Latin people, they get offended at being called white. They do not like it. They don't like it at all. So but we've got a narrative we've got to fit. And this just fits so neatly inside the narrative. Man, ooh, that makes me suspicious. However, we will get some clarity on this because apparently the FBI is involved. And whoever did it done fucked up, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, the FBI getting involved, that's. Uh, I, do we have a more corrupt organization in America now than the FBI?
The IRS, Congress, the EPA.
I don't know. So if an organization is corrupted by another corrupt organization, is the corruption diluted as it moves through the channels, or is it or is it buffed up? What or is it exacerbated by its previous support? That's I have to think about that one. That's a pretty
Uh,
pickle.
I would come down on Fruit of the Poison Tree. That would be that would be my guess. But yeah, I I don't buy it, man. And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to eat crow. I told our buddies over at Polytech, if I was wrong, I'd call in and I'd eat the crow live on air. But the odds,
Now,
the
to be
fact,
clear, we do live in a hunting culture state. What he means is that he will go and shoot a crow and have it on air.
it's, I feel like you're overcommitting me.
We believe in exacerbating our metaphors here.
Let's take them to the extreme.
Well, buddy, I didn't promise that we'd have you come on with a caged crow and bite its head off like Ozzy Osbourne.
Look, that was a dove. But whatever. This is why you don't drink an entire bottle of cognac before you meet your new boss.
Roger that. Well, that's about all I got to say about any of these. So, um,
Oh, so please tell our dear viewers how Tim Pool is better than you.
oh yeah. Okay, so Tim Pool never takes a vacation. This is we're taking the rest of the week off. I'm taking my in-laws and going to Savannah and going to the beach, and I should be having mimosas and beignets for brunch tomorrow at Huey's on River Street. Um, so if y'all want to come out and meet the fat boy himself, I'll be at Huey's at River Street for brunch tomorrow. I will not give you a time, mostly because we have a horde of children, and so the 4 hour drive to Savannah could take 4 hours or 4.5 hours or a
All
week.
day.
It just depends on how many times the little ones have to empty their bladders.
All right, guys, we're stopping. I want everybody to go pee. I don't need to. Okay, well, we're not stopping again. And then, like, literally, you get back on I-16. I need to pee. You're gonna have to hold it. I can't hold it. We are still
Basically,
gonna
I'm just gonna tie a hefty. I'm just gonna stick them in a hefty bag and tie it up around their necks and strap them down in the car seats. And then
just
when we
wash
get
them
where we're
off in the
going, I'll
ocean.
just throw them in the ocean and let their clothes float away like murder victims.
But we are still gonna. It might be a PM uh, firearms Friday, or
Yeah,
we might even do
we'll
it
see you
on
Friday
Saturday.
evening.
But we'll still come back for our firearms show because yeah, Daddy needs that good stuff.
All right. Well, Drew, I appreciate you watching this morning, and
Thank you, sir.
we'll see y'all Friday evening. Be safe out there. I pushed a button. Nothing happened.